When someone undergoing treatment for blood cancer tried to report suspicious activity on their bank account, they did everything right. They didn't click any links, didn't trust a cold call, and found a trusted phone number to speak to the bank directly. But what followed exposed a systemic failure that should concern us all, because this person isn't alone. They're one of many people in the UK who are vulnerable, offline, or cognitively impaired, and who now find themselves shut out of a digital-first system that was never built with them in mind. I'm Mike Sivia from Vox Political, and I've got something to say about it. If you agree with me, and I think you will, then like, subscribe, comment, and buy me a coffee, because this is hard work. There should be a link on the screen right about now. Okay, let's dive in. The person I'm talking about did the right thing, but the system still failed. This individual doesn't use internet banking. They don't browse banking websites and wouldn't be able to navigate digital systems even if they wanted to. So, when they received a message about potential fraud, they ignored it, just like banks say you should, and tried to call the bank directly. But even that was harder than expected. The bank's website doesn't make its phone number easy to find. It isn't there, or if it is, it's buried beneath layers of app and online help prompts. So, for someone who doesn't use the internet, it's essentially inaccessible. Eventually, they found a verified number through non-digital means. It was on an old hard copy letter, of all things, and then they got through. That's when things got worse. Once connected to a genuine staff member, they were asked for their card number, a reasonable step. But then, unbelievably, they were asked for their PIN. That's the one thing banks tell us never to share. It's written on ATMs, stated on websites, printed in brochures. We'll never ask for your PIN. And yet here it was, requested by a real bank representative. Our customer didn't remember the PIN and said so. They were then asked to provide photo ID, a passport or driving license, but they didn't have either. No alternatives were offered. No escalation path was explained. The call ended with the bank saying they couldn't help. And that was it. No follow-up. No confirmation of whether fraud had occurred. No protection. Just limbo. Now contrast that with another vulnerable customer, this time an elderly person with a different bank. That bank proactively offered them a direct human support line. No apps, no online portals, just a number and a human being to call. Why the difference? Why should basic human support be a postcode lottery based on which bank happens to hold your money? Banks say they support vulnerable users, but what happens in practice tells a different story. Here's what vulnerable customers should be offered. A clearly advertised, human-staffed phone line. Alternative ways to prove identity if they don't have photo ID. Staff who are trained never to request a PIN and who offer safe, practical ways forward. A clear process to log and escalate fraud reports, even if standard procedures can't be followed. The right to escalate unresolved complaints to the Financial Ombudsman Service without having to go online to do it. Too often these protections are hidden, inconsistent, or just unavailable. Here's what needs to change. We need industry-wide standards, not optional extras. Every UK bank should be required to provide clearly advertised phone support for vulnerable customers, ensuring they can speak to a human directly when needed. They need to offer non-digital ways to resolve issues and submit evidence, including alternative ID verification methods for individuals who don't have passports or driving licenses. They should ensure staff are trained on the critical policy never to ask for sensitive information like PINs. And they should log and act on potential fraud, even when the caller doesn't fit the ideal digital customer profile. And they should make it easy to escalate cases to the Financial Ombudsman with paper or phone-based options. Regulators, such as the Financial Conduct Authority, should mandate accessibility and support standards across the industry. They should audit banks for compliance with protections specifically for vulnerable customers. They should penalise banks that fail to follow proper fraud protocols or abandon customers mid-process. You need an explicit right to escalate fraud concerns. Vulnerable customers must have the explicit right to escalate unresolved fraud concerns to the Financial Ombudsman Service. Non-digital routes for submitting complaints and reports must be available. Fast-track options should exist for medically vulnerable or cognitively impaired users who need urgent assistance. Right, here's what you can do. Check what support your bank offers to vulnerable users. Ask directly for a dedicated human contact line. Demand better protections for yourself and any vulnerable loved ones by reaching out to your bank and advocating for accessible support options. Contact your MP or relevant authorities to push for industry-wide standards in banking accessibility and fraud protections. If your bank fails to protect you or address your fraud concerns, use the Financial Ombudsman Service as your next step and make sure you document everything. Help raise awareness. Share this to push for change and to ensure that no one is left behind due to a broken system. Remember, multimodal verification, such as phone, postal, or in-person options, must be offered, especially for customers without digital access. Human contact should never be restricted to digital channels. Vulnerable customers must have direct access to support over the phone. Clear public education is needed about what banks can and cannot ask for, such as never asking for your PIN. Regulatory enforcement is critical. Banks must not be left to self-regulate when the stakes involve people's personal safety and security, because no one should be left in limbo for being too ill, too old, or too cautious to use an app. I've been Mike Sivier, and if you think what I've just said is worthwhile, then please at least buy me a coffee. I'm parched here. And do all those things that make YouTube's algorithm sit up and pay attention, like subscribe and comment. Maybe something similar has happened to you or someone you know. If so, tell us about it. Maybe this way we can bring about real and useful change. You can see me in the next one.